after the divorce with Willow. She rushed into marrying another man. She thought I was still hung up on our years of love, that I'd crashed the wedding in a scene of emotional chaos. But to her surprise, I never showed up at all, because I had already left for another country to become a Doctors Without Borders physician. Only when Willow realized I had truly moved on did she discover that she could no longer let go of me. Chapter 1. Bright lights illuminated the building of Lou Corporation. I was slowly escorted out, surrounded by people. Hey, that car over there must be Chairman Lou's, right? I looked up and met a woman smiling, almond-shaped eyes, gleaming like spring blossoms. My heart skipped a beat. I smiled and walked over. She tugged me down and left a kiss at the corner of my lips. The crowd instantly erupted into teasing and envious laughter. Wow, isn't Chairman Lou supposed to be away on a business trip? Can't believe she came to pick George up after work. They must be super in love. Obviously, they've known each other since childhood. Their bond is unbreakable. Oh right, today's their 5th wedding anniversary, isn't it? Willow and I were the textbook definition of a power couple in our social circle. At age 11, my parents died in a car accident. Old Mr. Lou, who had been comrades in arms with my grandfather, adopted me. At 22, Willow inherited her family's pharmaceutical company, and I joined the company's research division. At 25, old Mr. Lou passed away. On his deathbed, with one last decisive gesture, he arranged our marriage. We had been married for 5 years. Willow and I always attended public events hand in hand, our words and gestures full of intimacy. Our perfect couple image left no room for malicious gossip or opportunists looking to take advantage. Every anniversary and birthday, Willow would go all out, making her affections known in grand, public displays. Everyone envied our storybook romance. Willow took my arm and waved with a carefree smile. I'll be taking my man home now. Inside the car, just as I was about to speak, my slightly parted lips were suddenly kissed. I froze. After a moment, when I could breathe again, I frowned and asked, "You, looks like someone's taking photos." Willow whispered closely. So that's what it was. I almost misunderstood again. My chest ached faintly, and my face grew even more emotionless. Willow, unaware of anything, started the car in seemingly good spirits. Back at the Lou residence. Willow, George, it's been 5 years now, and you're still so loving and steady. When are you going to make me a grandmother? Sandra asked with a cheerful smile at the dinner table beside her. Martin nodded approvingly. Still a long way off, Mom. Willow replied casually and naturally. We're both busy, no rush. My expression remained unchanged, but my fingers tightened slightly around the fork. Everyone thought we were a loving, harmonious couple, even her parents, Sandra and Martin, but only Willow and I knew the truth. There wasn't even a hint of romantic love between us. That night, I stayed at the Lou home for the first time in a long while. As I washed my face, Willow was in the shower. Suddenly, the phone she'd left on the counter buzzed. I glanced at it instinctively, and froze. I miss you so much. The contact name, Makoto. My face had gone nearly pale. I stood frozen in place until the sound of running water stopped, and her warm, relaxed body leaned toward me. George, blow dry my hair, will you? Willow handed me the hairdryer as naturally as ever and sat on the counter, waiting. I stood there like a puppet, took it from her, and began to move through pure muscle memory. After a long pause, I asked in an even tone, Makoto came back to the country. The sound of the dryer cut off abruptly. In the mirror, I caught the flicker of hesitation in Willow's eyes. Yes, she said heavily. My hand almost trembled. I fought to suppress it, even forcing a slight smile. You two got back together? In the silence, I seemed to hear again Willow's hoarse and anguished voice from years ago. He left. He didn't want me. George. Why can't he just love me? Willow's face took on a trace of wistfulness. For a moment, she looked like that same girl from the past, bright-eyed and full of hope, offering all her love to the one she cared about. She shook her head. No, we only just got back in touch. Of course, back then, when Makoto left, it wasn't just for family and school reasons. Sandra's pressure and disapproval played a part, too. Makoto's father had been caught cheating, a scandal that hit the headlines. Since then, Sandra had always spoken critically of the entire Ito family, claiming their morals were corrupt and the family had no integrity. If they reconnected now, who knew how Sandra might humiliate Makoto again? Willow had always been bold, never hesitant about going after what she wanted, except when it came to people she truly cared about. Then she would act with cautious restraint, second-guessing every step. I turned away silently. Why are you always so calm? Willow suddenly asked, looking at my slender back. What if your Alicia came back? What would you do? I paused for a moment but didn't answer. Willow shrugged, somewhat disappointed, and her expression softened again as she picked up her phone. I stood by the window, expressionless. My jet-black eyes seemed forever devoid of any emotion. People often said I was like a cold machine, calm, rational, and hopelessly dull. And yet now, there was a shimmer in those pupils, the rims of my eyes, even the corners, were visibly red. I silently mouthed a single word: idiot. In the end, you still couldn't let him go. Chapter 2. Oh, right. Willow suddenly remembered something and handed me a bag. Anniversary gift. Inside was the latest luxury brand watch, elegant and high-end. Probably the kind of thing no man could dislike, at least in the eyes of a woman. I forced a polite smile and said thank you. Even though I never wore watches like this, Willow had given me countless similar gifts, every one of them tasteful and impressive. She played the role of a perfect wife almost impeccably. But I knew, when Willow truly loved someone, it didn't look like this. I don't even know what he likes anymore. I heard her absent-minded murmur while holding her phone. My lashes trembled ever so slightly. Willow only ever gets lost in thought like that for one person. Her warmth and generosity were traits of her upbringing and personality. Everyone around her felt warmed by her presence, and it was easy to mistake that warmth as meant only for you. As someone who had lost family and grown up under someone else's roof, I was drawn to that sun-like radiance. I fell in love, naively and deeply. I thought the light that illuminated my bleak youth was mine alone. I had quietly loved her for 10 years, but later, I realized that light had shined on me without even knowing it. She would casually gift me an expensive designer watch, yet spend months agonizing over what kind of present Makoto might like. She would take me to the finest restaurants, yet clumsily but sincerely make a homemade bento box for Makoto by hand. She would throw me a lively birthday party, but secretly ride behind Makoto on his motorcycle to the beach to watch a sunrise, just the two of them. When Willow truly liked someone, she became delicate, cautious, clumsy, and pure. When I realized all of this, I felt pathetic. Yet strangely, I didn't even feel resentment or jealousy, because even I thought, Makoto was amazing. He deserved Willow's affection far more than I did. But why now? Right now, I'm her legal husband in name and law. Makoto had left her without a word. 4 years, but the moment he returns and crooks his finger, her entire heart turns toward him again. That night, I was jolted awake by a sharp pain in my stomach, only to find the person who should have been beside me was gone. Startled, I reached for my phone, and was unexpectedly met with a social media post from Makoto. In my youthful arrogance, I lost the one who cherished me most. Thankfully, she never left. The photo was subtle, vague. Only a woman's partial silhouette could be seen. My stomach clenched in spasms. Cold sweat formed on my forehead. I stared blankly at the hand barely visible in the photo, a ring clearly gleaming on one finger. But somehow, I didn't feel like I had the right to accuse Willow of betrayal, because our marriage had always been a business deal from the beginning. Willow couldn't inherit anything unless she married me, and I, emotionally indifferent, didn't care who I married. I knew Willow agreed to it not just for the inheritance, but also as an act of defiance against Makoto. I didn't mind being used. After all, who among us was truly noble? In the beginning, we maintained a courteous, contract-bound relationship. Our actual lives didn't change much. Then one night, after too much alcohol, we lost control and ended up in bed together. The next day, we didn't speak of it, but from then on, we silently accepted the physical comfort. I was gambling, waiting, foolishly hoping that time would turn familiarity into love. But in the end, I lost. Willow never fell in love with me. Those 5 years were like a dream I stole for myself. I never expected the dream to shatter so quickly. A month after that night, I opened my email and found a message from a paparazzi. There was a price tag, along with attached photos. Willow, arm in arm with Makoto, entering a hotel. I stared at the unmistakable backs of the two of them for 10 whole minutes. Then, eerily calm, I transferred the payment to buy full rights to the photos. The man in the picture was tall and elegant, even more handsome and poised than when he was a youth. And me? I shifted my gaze to the reflection in the mirror, disheveled hair from long days in the lab, eyes glued to data, face haggard and exhausted. When are you coming back? I sent the message to the person who claimed to be on a business trip. It took hours to get a reply. Not sure. Things are kind of busy lately. There was no need to lie. Really. I stared at the message bubble and thought, Willow could have just said it directly, that she'd reconnected with Makoto, that the spark between them had reignited, that she still loved him. After all, we could have had a calm discussion, and just gotten the divorce over with. My vision blurred for a second, then quickly cleared. I didn't have the right to hold on to anything. Leaving the lab, I didn't want to return to an empty house. So I wandered aimlessly along the streets. Suddenly, someone tapped my shoulder. George, long time no see. Under the streetlight stood a woman, gentle as moonlight. I blinked in surprise before recognizing her. Alicia. Back in high school, Alicia had also been one of the campus stars, but unlike the others, she didn't come from a wealthy or powerful family. On the contrary, She was a scholarship student from a humble background, yet she was beautiful, kind-hearted, and exceptionally capable. She was just as well liked as the rich kids, but in Willow's eyes, Alicia had one more identity, the girl I had a crush on. Chapter 3. Seated at the restaurant, I suddenly recalled all the matchmaking mess Willow had caused under the guise of being helpful, and felt oddly uneasy. It's been a while. When did you get back? I smiled and asked her. Back then, Alicia and I had been fairly close, but once she joined Doctors Without Borders, our contact gradually faded, until it vanished altogether. Now, after years of experience abroad, Alicia looked steadier, more composed, yet her presence remained just as warm. Just taking a short break, she replied gently. Came home to rest for a bit. We quickly fell into an easy rhythm, catching up on all that had happened over the years. I listened as she told stories of disaster zones and rescue missions across the world, becoming more and more absorbed. George, Alicia looked at me carefully, weighing her words. Have you ever thought about joining us? I froze. Back then, one of the main reasons Alicia and I became close was because of our similar backgrounds. Her parents, both Doctors Without Borders, had died in conflict zones. My mother, as it happened, had been their classmate in med school. I had once had ideals, beliefs, but I'd also had attachments and selfishness. So even when Alicia mentioned this to me years ago, I'd only listened, never dared to act. But now, that image from my inbox surfaced again. Willow and Makoto, pressed Southwest intimately close. Maybe soon, there wouldn't be anything left tying me down. A few days later, Alicia sent over brochures and application materials. I sat in my study, quietly reading them. Suddenly, the door opened. I calmly switched the screen without missing a beat. It was Willow. She wore her usual relaxed smile, but something about it seemed off. What are you up to? She walked closer as she spoke, the scent of alcohol drifting with her. I wasn't ready to tell Willow anything about this, so I deflected casually. Reading reports. Have you been drinking? My tone wasn't particularly friendly, but Willow just let out a soft laugh, then draped herself over me like a sleepy cat. Warm touches began to trail across my shoulder and neck. I shivered instinctively and raised my hand to gently push her away. I want to. Her slurred words spilled out between breaths, and those glistening eyes locked onto mine, dazed. Seductive. Who do you want? Me, or Makoto? Logic told me I should stop, but under her gaze, my hand, once ready to resist, slowly lost all strength. I couldn't resist Willow. I never could. After years as a married couple, our bodies knew each other too well, too intimately. Sweat trickled down my forehead, and in the haze, I vaguely heard Willow say something. The photo. Want to know what it is? My brows furrowed, voice hoarse. I asked, what? I met her eyes, and suddenly sobered up completely, because in the middle of this act, her gaze was strangely calm, deep. Without a word, she picked up her phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward me. The heated air turned cold. I stared at the image, a candid photo of me and Alicia. My eyes blinked slowly. When did you reconnect with her? Why didn't you tell me? Willow's chest felt tight, like something was pressing down on it. In the photo, George smiled, so warm, so gentle, a kind of expression she'd never seen directed at herself. They looked so close, so natural together. Had it been going on all this time? I shifted my gaze from the screen to her face. Willow still wore her usual easy smile, but I clearly caught the subtle trace of displeasure behind it. For a brief second, I almost believed she was jealous. Then I laughed internally. It wasn't jealousy, just wounded pride. She'd been caught off guard, exposed. There was no way it was anything more. I lay back down, suddenly feeling drained and powerless. Willow's voice took on the faintest note of confrontation. Don't you have anything to, Makoto? I cut her off, my gaze fixed on the woman who fell instantly silent. I have photos of you and Makoto, too. You two are back together. Congratulations. Chapter 4. A flicker of panic and guilt flashed across Willow's face. I grabbed some clothes and stood up, heading toward the bathroom. But just as I moved, her hand suddenly caught mine. Are you mad? She asked. I paused for a second, turned my head toward her, and the corner of my lips curled up faintly. Mad? Why would I be? I asked. If you want a divorce, just let me know. I don't care about the assets or anything else. My voice was calm, almost indifferent, but only I knew how suffocating the pain in my chest was. Willow didn't let go. She stared at me for a moment, her gaze heavy, and then suddenly bit her lip and snapped. You're really that eager to be done with it? You say it so lightly, like you can't wait to get divorced tomorrow and run off to Alicia the next day. The anger and accusation in her voice came out of nowhere. My eyes darkened, and I abruptly shook off her hand. Willow, I said coldly, have you forgotten what we are to each other? If there was one thing I was good at, it was putting on a front, using sharp words like armor to hide the vulnerability inside. Too afraid of getting hurt. We didn't get married out of love. We both knew the other had someone they couldn't let go of. So don't speak to me like I'm the one cheating. Okay, I said sharply. And besides, Alicia and I just ran into each other. Nothing happened. But you and Makoto, you lied about a business trip. Checked into a hotel with him. If we really want to talk about betrayal in marriage, who betrayed who? I stopped myself, swallowing the rest of the sentence. Willow's face had turned visibly pale. Her chest rose and fell slightly. Lips pressed tight. She had no reply. Just 10 minutes ago, we were wrapped in passion. Now, not a trace of warmth remained. When I came out of the bathroom, Willow was gone. Not a shadow of her left in the house. We were in a cold war. For the next 2 weeks, we barely spoke. Sometimes we didn't even cross paths. During those long, silent nights alone, I slowly began filling out the application form. A few days later, after work, Willow showed up quietly to pick me up for a social gala. I'd been surviving on barely any sleep, but I still forced a smile and linked my arm with hers. I didn't expect him to be there. Makoto, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, he approached us with practiced ease and familiarity. George, he smiled, eyes crinkling. Long time no see. My entire body tensed, but under so many watching eyes, I had no choice but to return the pleasantries with a smile. What was the point of this? In a quieter corner, my expression was flat, but my voice carried the undercurrent of frustration. If Makoto was going to be here, why did you still drag me along? Willow was uncharacteristically silent today. Her dark eyes stared at me without blinking, impossible to read. Why not? She replied calmly. I thought you two got along pretty well. I had no response. I had a gut feeling something was off with Willow, but I couldn't pinpoint exactly why, and I had no way to refute what she said. After a long silence, I turned away and left her with just one sentence. Whatever. I just don't want people getting the wrong idea and gossiping. I sat for a while in the lounge, splashed some water on my face, and walked out after calming myself down. My leather shoes made no sound as they sank into the carpet. At the end of the corridor, 2 figures were entangled. As I got closer, the low rustle of intimate whispers reached my ears. Impossible to ignore. My brain stalled for a moment. Without thinking, I just walked straight toward them. The sight of Willow and Makoto kissing passionately hit me head on. It was the first time I had seen them being this intimate with my own eyes. Willow had her back to me, wrapped in his arms, her head tilting back again and again as she kissed him, only to be forcefully held in place by his hand at the back of her neck. That position, I knew it all too well. It was Willow's favorite way to be kissed. I had kissed her like that countless times. Suddenly, her tightly shut, trembling eyelids flew open, and Makoto locked eyes with me, without missing a beat. My breath hitched. I could clearly see the satisfaction and smugness in his pupils. When Willow weakly began to push at Makoto's shoulders to pause the kiss, I jerked backward, leaning against the wall. My mind went blank. My breathing shook. My heart pounded, fast and sharp with pain. What are you doing hiding here, George? I flinched violently, eyes widening in shock as Makoto appeared before me. His expression as calm as ever. His cheeks were still flushed, lips slightly swollen and glistening. I opened my mouth but couldn't make a sound. Makoto, on the other hand, casually patted me on the back, speaking as if we were close. You stood there watching for quite a while. Got something to say? That provocative look he'd given me earlier still flashed in my mind, though I didn't understand why. You two got back together, I said slowly, my throat dry and hoarse. That's nice. Makoto's beautiful face leaned in close. His dark, shiny eyes stared directly into mine. He didn't speak for a long moment. George, he finally said, voice soft as a drifting feather. All these years, and you're still the same hypocrite. Do you even realize? What I hate the most is that holier-than-thou act, like nothing ever gets to you. His voice trailed off to almost nothing. Then, all of a sudden, Makoto grabbed my hand and slammed it into his own face. A red handprint bloomed across his cheek, and blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. George, Makoto shouted hoarsely, eyes blazing. Why the hell would you do this? I trusted you back then, and because of you, Willow and I spent years apart because of some stupid misunderstanding. And now I'm back. Can't you at least let us be together properly? My arm, used without consent, still hung in the air. Then it hit me. I turned my head and saw Willow stepping slowly out from the side, handbag in hand. Chapter 5. What are you saying? I stared at Makoto, my brows drawn tightly together. Makoto clutched my arm, looking aggrieved and on the verge of tears. You're still trying to deny it? When I went abroad years ago, I gave you the first watch Willow ever gifted me, and asked you to tell her, if she truly loved me, she'd wait. But what did you do? Makoto accused, voice rising. You never told her, did you? And you threw the watch away. Then you used the fact that Grandpa Lou liked you to get him to write up that engagement clause in his will. I stared at him in disbelief. twisting the truth, making things up out of thin air, and somehow, making it sound convincing. A watch, a message. I was so furious my hands trembled. Clenching my fists tightly, I snapped back. Do you have any proof? Why would I even do something like that? Why? Makoto, still with tears on his face, suddenly smiled. George, because you're in love with Willow. You were obsessed with her, weren't you? So crazy about her you'd do anything to get her. Like a thunderclap on a clear day, a roar filled my ears and I froze. A love I had hidden for over a decade, exposed like this, in a moment so ugly and humiliating. My eyes drifted, slowly, toward Willow, who had remained silent all this time. My breath caught. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and disappointment, piercing through me like sharp glass. She believed him, and I realized with crushing clarity, it wasn't just now. Makoto had probably been feeding her this version of the truth again and again over the past few days, complete with fabricated evidence. That's why she'd been acting so off lately, like she had something she wanted to say, but couldn't. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. So this was the reason you had me come here today, to see Makoto. The more absurd it became, the more I laughed, my lips curled with bitter irony. You wanted to see what dumb thing I'd do next to try and ruin your tragic little love story, didn't you? Makoto was still breathing hard, overcome with emotion. After a long pause, Willow finally spoke. So it's true. You really, all this time, you were in love with me. Makoto went still. For a fleeting moment, an odd blankness crossed his face, but neither of us noticed. It was all too humiliating, too pathetic. I knew if I stayed a second longer, I wouldn't be able to hold back the tears. Who I love is none of your business anymore. My eyes were red, but my voice was calm and even. Willow, let's get a divorce. Without waiting for their reactions, I turned and walked away, my pace quick and firm. Only once I was in the back seat of the car did my body finally release the tension. My head hung low. A tear landed on my trousers, followed by a quiet, stifled sob. Alicia had finally received my application for Doctors Without Borders. Overjoyed, she invited me to a cafe to talk more about the details. My eyelids had been puffy for days. Even when we met, the swelling hadn't fully gone down, but I wore a neutral expression and even seemed oddly cheerful, discussing various plans with Alicia in high spirits. Suddenly, a shrill ringtone interrupted our conversation. The caller ID read Sandra. I answered, and her overly calm voice came through the line. George, how are things going with you and Willow lately? Any fights? A half-drafted divorce agreement popped into my mind. I responded casually. Why the sudden interest, Mom? Before she could come up with an excuse, Alicia gasped softly from across the table. I looked up and saw her staring at her phone, stunned. After hesitating a moment, Alicia flipped the screen toward me. A massive, glaring news headline crashed into my vision. Willow, CEO of Lu Pharmaceuticals, spotted at a private hospital's OB/GYN wing, accompanied not by husband George, but celebrity Makoto. Marital crisis confirmed. Chapter 6, The Lu Residence. On the sofa sat Sandra and Martin, both with stormy expressions. Willow knelt in the center of the living room, her head bowed, but her back was perfectly straight. Young Master Wang is back. The housekeeper's voice finally broke the heavy silence. Willow flinched slightly and turned her head, meeting my indifferent eyes. I gave her only a brief, careless glance before looking away, but for some reason, that small gesture made her heart clench. It took her a couple of seconds to regain her composure. Sandra frowned and quickly pulled my hand into hers, her voice filled with guilt and concern. George, look at you. You've gotten so thin. I kept my eyes down and said nothing, but then, Willow suddenly let out a cold laugh. Can't tell if you're trying to act pitiful or if you're actually feeling guilty. She spoke quietly, soft enough that only I, standing close, could hear the full extent of her sarcasm. I gave no reaction, only clenched my jaw tighter. Sandra hadn't caught the words, but she had seen her daughter's contemptuous expression, and it was enough to make her face darken with anger. What are you muttering about now? She snapped. After making a mess with that punk from the Ito family, do you still have any regard for us, or for your own reputation? Martin quickly reached out to calm his wife and said grimly, Willow, your mother and I already had the press suppress the news, and you're going to end it with that Ito boy. Now, I don't care what's in your belly, it could be a damn mutt, we're not acknowledging it. Willow's face turned pale with rage. Her parents' tone was dripping with disdain, and it infuriated her. I'm pregnant. That's a fact you can't erase. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. We've already lost so many years. I wronged him once, I won't hurt him again. Her words were firm and absolute. She would protect Makoto no matter the cost, even in his absence. What about George? Sandra shouted, her voice sharp. Though I had remained silent the entire time, I could feel Willow's gaze boring into my back. Slowly, I turned my head. Willow looked at me under lowered lashes and, for a moment, Couldn't help but think, he really had lost weight. Was it because he felt guilty now that the truth had come out? Or was it because he still resented her and Makoto, because he hadn't truly let go? She tried hard to read something from my blank expression, but my eyes were as still and lifeless as stagnant water, and that only made her feel more restless. So she stared into those eyes, and said, deliberately, one word at a time, I've made up my mind. From now on, I'll only be with the one I love. My lashes fluttered rapidly. A glimmer of pain, impossible to suppress, cracked through my pupils. Willow caught it, sharp and unmistakable, and in that flash, she felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, but also, unexpectedly, a tinge of discomfort. Utter nonsense. Sandra exploded. Dad, Mom. I finally spoke, my voice calm and level. I turned my head and paused for 2 seconds, then suddenly bent down on both knees. Gasps filled the room. Willow stared in shock at my thin, kneeling figure. Then she heard my voice, cold and detached. Willow and I have already discussed it. We're getting a divorce. The room fell into a stunned silence. Willow opened her mouth, but only managed a broken whisper. Go. George, what kind of stunt are you pulling now? Sandra was nearly in tears, panicked. George, I understand you're upset, but divorce, this is too far. We can still. Aunt Sandra, that word, aunt, not mom, hit her like a slap. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and Willow, still looking at my back, suddenly felt an ache tightening in her chest, but she couldn't figure out why. Chapter 7. My face was pale, but I knelt with a straight back and spoke calmly. All these years, I've never forgotten how much I owe the Liu family for raising me. I'm truly grateful. Even after Willow and I divorce, I'll still visit you often. There's no love between Willow and me. We're not right for each other. Now that Makoto is back, just let them be together. I gave a small laugh. Didn't you always say, Aunt Sandra, how much you wanted to be a grandmother? Sandra's lips trembled, but she couldn't form a response. After a long moment, she muttered bitterly, what a sin. Martin's face was dark, but he kept his voice as even as possible. Whatever the case, George, get up first. I was halfway to standing when a hesitant voice echoed from the corridor. Sir, madam, there's a visitor. It's Mr. Ito. I froze and turned to look. Makoto stood there, teary-eyed and pitiful, yet the moment our eyes met, I saw it. That flash of smug triumph, brief, sharp, and meant only for me. Even Willow seemed startled by his sudden arrival. Makoto rushed over to shield her protectively. What are you doing here? She whispered. His gaze dropped instinctively to her belly, clearly full of worry. The pregnancy had been a surprise, even to her. She had been unable to resist the temptation of the one who had once been her unreachable teenage dream, but she hadn't really figured out what to do about their relationship. She had taken precautions, cautiously. So when she found out she was pregnant, though she'd put on a joyful front, she couldn't hide her inner panic. At the banquet, when George had coldly proposed divorce, Willow had assumed it was nothing more than wounded pride and embarrassment after being exposed, not something he'd follow through with. She couldn't believe someone like George, who had once gone to such great lengths, who had hidden his feelings for her for so many years, could let go so easily. But today, hearing him state his decision in front of her parents, hearing him call Sandra aunt instead of mom, she finally began to realize, maybe she never really understood this quiet, unreadable man she had known for so long. Behind her, Makoto's hoarse voice broke in. Uncle, Auntie. Willow and I truly love each other. I really love her. He was naturally handsome, and now, with his reddened eyes, he looked even more sincere and deeply emotional. Since George doesn't want to be with Willow anymore, please, let us be together. For a brief second, Willow's face darkened. She stared at me, expressionless, but I didn't even glance back at her. And so, this absurd farce finally met its end, with compromise. I signed the divorce papers with Willow at an astonishingly fast pace, and moved all my belongings out of the apartment. Willow, for some reason, grew oddly competitive. Seeing how businesslike and cold I acted, she said nothing. She didn't even flinch when, on the very last day I was packing, she openly brought Makoto to move in. I don't like that painting, Makoto said, surveying the apartment and stroking his chin. We'll need to change that. Oh, and this spot too, that's gotta go. Willow smiled sweetly, agreeing to everything. I looked at the happy couple and couldn't help but curve my lips into a faint smirk. This apartment's layout and decor, we had once designed it together. Every detail, but now, none of it meant anything anymore. I rolled my suitcase out the door, alone, leaving behind their saccharine affection and grating laughter. Soon after, Willow and I were standing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, each holding a freshly issued divorce certificate. Willow stared at the thin booklet in her hand, dazed. It was as if, only now, the reality sank in. We were truly over. From now on, not even friends. I, on the other hand, casually slipped mine into my bag, gave her a slight nod, and turned to leave, without hesitation. Chapter 8. Wait. Before my brain even fully processed what was happening, Willow's voice called out to stop me. I turned around and paused, offering my ex-wife the last bit of my patience. She stood there stiffly for a long while, as if struggling to find her words. Finally, she blurted out. When did you start having feelings for me? I was caught off guard for a moment. My brows drew together briefly, then relaxed as I let out a soft, humorless laugh. What difference would that make to you now? I replied flatly. Would knowing add some spice to your love life going forward? Willow's face froze, a flash of irritation crossing it. Was that necessary, if we're being honest? Weren't you the one who wronged both me and Makoto? I was silent for a long beat, then let out a soft chuckle, without offering a single word in return. I adjusted the strap on my watch and made no move to stay. If I sent you an invitation to the wedding, would you come? Willow suddenly shouted toward my back, her voice oddly loud and uncertain. But by the time I pulled away in my car, she had received no answer. 3 months later, Capital Airport, wearing simple clothes and no makeup, I pushed my luggage through the crowd, scanning my surroundings. Over here, George. A calm, soft-spoken woman waved at me. I instantly smiled and walked toward her. Alicia patted my shoulder with a teasing grin. Nervous? You ready for this? Through my shirt, I reached to touch the pendant around my neck, a keepsake from my late mother. Yeah, I nodded, grinning broadly. I'm ready. Ready to walk forward alone. For no one but myself. At the hotel wedding venue, Makoto sat alone in the dressing room, dressed in a finely tailored suit. He admired himself in the mirror, clearly satisfied with how he looked. Thinking about how smoothly everything had gone, a pleased smile crept onto his face. Suddenly, there was a soft noise at the door. His movements halted, and through the reflection, he spotted a woman casually strolling in. Makoto whipped around, clearly irritated. What are you doing here? The woman, cradling her belly, walked up to him nonchalantly, a sly smile on her face. What? It's your big day. How could I not come? She leaned in and wrapped her arms around him. Babe, you look so handsome today. Makoto's cold expression faltered. After a few playful shakes from her, he gave in and let out a reluctant, but smug, smile. You're way too clingy, Maria. Don't mess up my hair. Ugh. Maria let out a dramatic sigh. So handsome, and yet you're marrying another woman, my poor heart. Makoto gave her a side glance, half amused, half annoyed. You know damn well I'm doing this for you. If it weren't for you, he mumbled, but didn't finish the sentence. Maria quickly forced a smile, pulling his hand to her belly. Yes, our hero, she cooed. Making such a huge sacrifice for our future as a family of 3. Makoto looked down, his eyes soft with affection. He kissed her on the cheek. Just wait for me, Maria. Meanwhile, in the main wedding hall, dressed in her wedding gown, Willow stood quietly off to the side, her gaze drifting across the decor. She seemed distracted, but her eyes kept flicking back to the entrance, again and again, as if she were waiting for someone. Well, what's the bride doing hiding out here all alone? A playful voice broke through the silence. It was Sophia, Willow's longtime best friend. She wrapped an arm around Willow's shoulder, following her gaze toward the doors. Let me guess, Sophia said with an annoyingly teasing smile. Don't tell me you're waiting for someone. She leaned in closer. Could it be our dear George? Willow's expression didn't change. She shot Sophia a sideways glance, but didn't respond. Sophia had been a heartbreaker since they were kids, falling for one guy after another. Her relationships never lasted more than 3 months. Back in high school, she'd even had a fleeting crush on George. One time, they were all hanging out together, and Sophia had a little too much to drink. Her mouth got ahead of her brain. Just look at George, all clean-cut and proper in that boring school uniform. Honestly, I've never played with that type before. Just wait. You guys, watch me. Smack. Her words were cut short as she crashed onto the table, knocking over a bunch of bottles, groaning. F***ck, Willow, what the hell? Young and delicate as she looked, Willow stood there with an ice-cold expression. The slap she'd just delivered had left her fingers flushed and trembling with restrained fury. Her breathing was sharp and uneven. Let me make this clear, Sophia, she said, her voice cutting. Don't touch George. With that, she turned and stormed off, ignoring any idea of friendship. Still sitting on the floor, Sophia rubbed her face with a wince. I was just joking. I didn't do anything, she shouted after her. What is it with you? Isn't loving Makoto enough? You want George too, Princess Lou. Now, years later, the memory suddenly replayed itself in Sophia's mind. She clicked her tongue. Back then, Willow had been so head over heels for Makoto. Everyone thought they'd end up together for sure. But just like that, she turned around and married George instead. And while close friends knew Lou Sr. had probably arranged some of it, over time, The couple had seemed genuinely affectionate. Even outsiders began to believe they had fallen in love for real. Who could have seen this coming? Makoto returned. And suddenly everything flipped. Man, you really went all in. Sophia sighed. Divorced fast. Remarried even faster. Got back together with your teenage dream, and now a baby on the way. You're moving at like 800x speed. Willow didn't respond for a long time. Then she said quietly, "My love life isn't yours to comment on, Miss Kim." All right. Sophia wasn't offended. She just shrugged. As long as you don't regret it. And George's heart's not broken. Then hey, happy ending for everyone. Nothing for me to complain about. No regrets. No heartbreak. Suddenly, Willow's mind flashed back to George's indifferent eyes. That distant silhouette as he walked away. She couldn't help herself. She pulled out her phone and opened a chat window. Where are you? Are you really not coming? But all the way until the last guest left and the wedding was over. Not a single word came back. Chapter 9. George. Over here. I was standing in the modest hospital cafeteria, tray in hand, scanning the room when I spotted Alicia waving at me, smiling. I made my way over, only to notice someone unfamiliar sitting beside her. Ahem. Allow me to introduce you to, Alicia said, gesturing with her open palm. This is Dr. Wang. George just joined us recently and already showing outstanding skill. And this, she added, patting the woman next to her on the shoulder, is an old friend of ours, a war correspondent, Anna. Anna smiled warmly. Nice to meet you, Dr. Wang. I nodded politely in return, not thinking too much of it, but instinctively, my eyes swept over her. In a place ravaged by conflict, even the most refined souls inevitably take on a rough edge. I myself hadn't washed my hair in days and had just resigned to wearing a cap. I'd come straight from multiple surgeries, my eyes puffy, my face worn out, but Anna carried an oddly serene presence. Her clothes were tidy and crisp, her movements unhurried and composed. Probably some rich young lady here to experience life, I thought absent-mindedly as I shoved a mouthful of food into my mouth. Then again, even if the emperor himself showed up, it wouldn't matter to me. Dr. Wang. A nurse rushed into the cafeteria, heading straight for me. That patient they just brought in, something seems off. You'd better take a look. I immediately swallowed a few more bites and replied, got it. I'll head out first, I said quickly, nodding as I grabbed my tray and made a fast exit. The two women watched me leave, my figure all business and purpose. Alicia turned her gaze back, grinning mischievously. Wow, looks like he has zero recollection of you. Anna didn't look away until George had fully disappeared. Her tone was calm, unaffected. That's normal. We never really interacted directly anyway. Alicia smirked. Never interacted. Sure, but that didn't stop you from pining for him all these years. You came back from overseas. Heard he joined up, and suddenly made such an effort to tidy yourself up just to make a good impression. Anna had no response. She just took a sip of water in silence. Today might have been the first time George met her, but for Anna, her impression of him had been sealed 4 years ago. Back then, she wasn't yet a war correspondent, just a restless spirit, roaming the world with her camera, capturing everything that spoke to her. She had made a rare trip back home, only to be dragged by her mother to attend a formal banquet. Anna rarely wore gowns and felt awkward, constantly adjusting the tight fabric around her waist as she leaned idly to the side. Then suddenly, her gaze froze. Not far away stood a man, handsome, quiet, with a natural, unassuming elegance. His eyelids drooped with fatigue. He looked hungry, but clearly had no appetite. He was nibbling listlessly at a piece of cake. Strangely, the restless irritation that had been building up inside Anna completely melted away in that moment. It was like a spring breeze had brushed gently past her chest, soothing her agitation. Her fingers twitched, itching to lift a camera, to capture that fleeting image. But of course, she hadn't brought one. Instead, she simply lifted her hands and formed a frame with her fingers. She didn't really mix with people in his circle, so she searched her memory for who he might be, but nothing came to mind. Just as she had organized her thoughts and was about to approach him, the man's otherwise mild features suddenly came to life. Though his expression remained mostly neutral, Anna could swear his eyes lit up. A woman walked over, and the man straightened up, allowing her to link arms with him. It was then that Anna noticed the diamond ring on his right hand. The woman complained. "I'm so tired," he replied gently. "You've had a long day." "It's okay, we're heading home soon." Their intimate, effortless exchange floated to Anna's ears from a short distance away. Married. Anna, who had just straightened her posture, leaned back again, her eyes following the couple's retreating figures. She couldn't quite name the feeling welling up inside her. Later, she casually asked her mother about the man and found out who he was. George, that was his name. He used to be the adopted son of the Liu family, and had already been married for a year to a Liu family daughter named Willow. Look at them, what a perfect match, talented and beautiful, and so in love, her mother said, seizing the chance to scold her again. Meanwhile, you're out all the time. No stability at all. If only you'd bring home a boyfriend one of these days. I honestly don't even know what kind of man a young lady like you would go for. What kind of man? Anna let her mother's nagging drift in one ear and out the other. Her thoughts wandered. She thought once again of that moment, when he had framed the view with his hands like a photo. Chapter 10. Willow. This is the new housekeeper I just hired. When Willow returned home, Makoto greeted her with a smile, leading a young woman over to introduce her. Not long ago, the former housekeeper, Auntie Zhang, had to resign suddenly due to a family emergency. During this time, Willow had been eating at the office or outside and didn't feel particularly inconvenienced, so she hadn't rushed to find a replacement. She gave the new housekeeper a casual glance. The young woman was dressed formally, with just the right expression of humility on her face, yet somehow, Willow felt something odd about her overall presence. Hello, Chairwoman Liu. I'm Maria. In the instant their eyes met, Maria's gaze seemed to flash with a hint of provocation and disdain, but it was gone in a blink. When Willow looked again with a frown, there was no trace of it. Maybe it's just fatigue making my nerves fray, she told herself silently. She rubbed her temples and turned slightly, preparing to go upstairs. If you think she'll do, keep her. Willow climbed the stairs absent-mindedly. Naturally, she didn't notice behind her. The so-called new housekeeper's hand was brushing along her husband's arm. Makoto glanced back with a smirk, silently brushing Maria's hand away. Behave yourself. Willow had been heading straight for the bathroom to shower, but for some reason, she stopped in her tracks when she passed by the study. There were originally 2 studies in the house, since both people used to have busy work lives, but now, Makoto had no need for a study, and this room had been left unused. Willow stood at the doorway for quite a while, her hand hovering uncertainly over the doorknob. She lowered her eyes and slowly opened the door. The housekeeper cleaned regularly, so the room wasn't covered in dust like an abandoned space. Standing by the door, Willow looked at the empty room and, for some reason, felt a hollow sensation in her chest. She walked inside and suddenly remembered that night a few months ago. She had received a photo of George meeting with Alicia, and her mood had instantly soured. When she got home, she had impulsively slept with George and questioned him about that meeting. Why had she done that? Was it her possessiveness acting up? Willow sat down in the chair, leaning back, and scenes of George working diligently at the desk began to surface in her mind. He had always been that way, whether as a student or later in the research lab. He had always been meticulous and focused. Willow had once thought he was dull and boring, but sitting here now, she found herself overwhelmed by something that felt a lot like longing. She was still dazed when Makoto's bright voice called from downstairs, "Honey, come down for dinner." Willow snapped out of it, suddenly feeling a pang of guilt. She shook her head, brushing away those untimely thoughts and emotions. Don't think about it anymore. What she needed to do now was to cherish Makoto properly. Chapter 11. Thud. Standing in the suddenly pitch-black bathroom, my hair still full of foam, I froze in place. What the hell? Power and water outage. I quickly wiped the water off my body and threw on a loose t-shirt and shorts. I walked around the room, but couldn't find anything to rinse the shampoo from my hair. Helpless, I pushed open the door, planning to go out and see what was going on. My shoulder jerked back suddenly. I had just bumped straight into someone holding a lantern. Anna Sue. The woman looked startled too by the door opening so suddenly. After a pause, she replied, "That's me," she explained. "There was an issue with the main switch. I wasn't sure if you were affected too, so I came to check. My room's pretty close to yours." She tilted her head and pointed, "Just over there." I followed her gesture, nodded in understanding. "Ah, okay, thanks." For some reason, Anna suddenly lowered her gaze and fell silent. As I looked down slightly into her eyes, I found myself randomly thinking they were actually quite beautiful. Suddenly, something cold dripped down my shoulder, a clump of foam falling from my hair. "Ah," I said awkwardly, brushing at my head. The water went out while I was washing my hair. So, yeah, maybe I imagined it. But Anna's lips curled slightly, as if she were trying not to laugh. She said gently, "There's a lake out back. The water there's fairly clean. You can make do with that." Under the silent night sky, the only sound was the soft splashing of water. Anna stood on the grass with the lantern, her back to the lake. She lowered her eyes quietly, listening to the sounds behind her, feeling an inexplicable nervousness. "Why aren't you saying anything?" I stood in the lake, looking at her slim silhouette. "Let's chat a bit." Anna paused for a moment, then asked thoughtfully, "Why did you come here?" "Alicia told me you used to work in a lab. I've heard about some of your research. It's impressive," she added sincerely. Maybe it was the bright stars or the soft night breeze, but something in me relaxed. Her rare openness put me at ease. "I've actually always wanted to come. My mom, she used to talk about this dream all the time. When she mentioned her classmates and friends, it was always with admiration, but she gave it up, for me and my dad. As I poured water over myself, I murmured, almost absent-mindedly, I gave it up too. For a time, I buried that dream completely. Anna listened quietly, then suddenly blurted out, was it because of someone you loved? The moment she said it, she regretted it and quickly tried to take it back. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay. I was slightly taken aback, but not angry. I even smiled. You're not wrong. That's exactly why. Did Alicia tell you? Yeah. I was married before. I only came here after the divorce. It had been a long time since I'd last thought of Willow. Now that her name had come up, I was surprised by the calm I felt inside. No heartbreak, no turmoil, just a faint, unavoidable sense of wistfulness. Anna's voice was soft. Why did you two divorce? Because she didn't love me. Behind me, the sound of water stirred, and slow footsteps approached. I came out of the lake with a towel draped over my head, still dripping slightly. Anna froze, instinctively turning away, but then she seemed to realize something and quickly turned back. Sorry, buffed. I couldn't help laughing. For some reason, she seemed kind of adorably awkward. It's not like I'm naked or anything. You don't have to be that cautious. Anna tugged awkwardly at her earlobe, her ears slightly red with heat. After a couple of seconds of silence, she brought the topic back up. What you said earlier, what did you mean? Exactly what it sounded like. Our marriage was a bit complicated. I explained as I dried my hair. Basically, it wasn't mutual love. She had someone else she cared about. Anna's gaze unconsciously dropped to a droplet of water on my neck. It clung there a moment before slowly tracing down my skin and disappearing into my collarbone. But, you did like her, didn't you? Was it painful? I looked down, as if thinking it over, then smiled. Whether I liked her or not, I guess it doesn't matter all that much. Either way, it passes eventually. I draped the towel around my neck and tilted my head back, eyes reflecting the sky. Wow, there are so many stars tonight. They're beautiful. Anna only glanced up briefly before her eyes returned to me. She looked at my tilted profile and softly responded with a quiet Suddenly, I felt something settle on my shoulders. I turned my head and blinked in surprise, my hands automatically catching the towel now draped over me. Anna's delicate face was close, her ears clearly flushed red. It gets cold at night, she explained, and you're still dripping wet. Use this first. Oh, okay. I suddenly felt a bit dumb, stumbling over my words. I hadn't been self-conscious earlier, being shirtless and all, but now, unexpectedly, I felt a little embarrassed. There was a faint scent lingering on the towel, Anna's scent. We walked back to the house in comfortable silence. At the door, we stood still for a moment, looking at each other across the small space between us. Good night, we spoke in unison. Chapter 12. Top floor of the Lou Corporation. Willow was working at her desk when a sudden, sharp pain stabbed through her lower abdomen. Just then, Sandra walked in and let out a terrified scream. Willow, are you okay? Willow collapsed to the floor, clutching her stomach, struggling to speak through the pain. She gasped, Makoto, call Makoto. By the time Makoto rushed to the hospital at full speed, Willow was already in the operating room. He was panting as he asked, Mom, how is she? Sandra's face was full of worry. I don't know. She's been in there for a long time and hasn't come out yet. You have no idea. If I hadn't gone to the office today, who knows what would have happened to her? Her eyes were red and brimming with tears, clearly still shaken. The moment I opened the door, Willow was already lying on the carpet, and there was blood everywhere. At her words, Makoto's brow twitched, anxiety flashing across his face as he stared at the glowing red light above the operating room door. Suddenly, Sandra seemed to think of something and turned to him sharply, her voice rising in anger. And you, where the hell were you? It's so late, why did it take you this long to get here? Guilt flickered briefly across Makoto's face, but he quickly tried to explain. I was busy. Mom, really, if I'd known something like this would happen, I would have never left Willow alone. Not for a second. No one knew how long they waited outside the operating room. At last, the red light went off. The doctor emerged, drenched in sweat, pulling down his mask. Congratulations, mother and daughter are both safe. In that instant, everyone let out a breath of relief. Sandra clutched her chest and leaned weakly against Martin, murmuring over and over, thank goodness, thank goodness. Makoto's heart was racing uncontrollably. In the hospital room, Willow lay on the bed, pale and fragile, as if she could be blown away by the faintest breeze. Makoto sat by her side, gently brushing her delicate face with his fingertips. Suddenly, her long lashes trembled. Slowly, she opened her eyes. You're awake. Makoto stood up at once, his voice gentle and low. The anesthesia must have worn off, and waves of pain came rushing back in. Willow frowned slightly, unable to hold back her reaction. Her blurred vision seemed to take a moment to recognize the man in front of her. Honey, I'm here. I'm right here. Makoto responded instantly, pain and concern written all over his face. I told you, I'd always stay by your side. It's a girl. She looks like you. Absolutely adorable. At the mention of their child, a faint smile touched the corners of Makoto's eyes. But suddenly, as if something came to mind, that smile twisted ever so slightly. He placed a tender kiss on Willow's forehead and whispered, "You've worked so hard, Willow." Willow's heart tightened. As she slowly closed her eyes, a strange bitterness rose in her mouth. Chapter 13. Several days later, still at the hospital, in another room, a woman gently rocked the crib with a faint smile on her face. Suddenly, the door opened and someone walked in. The woman looked up and instantly froze. Her expression cooled, and she straightened her posture, a subtle air of distance forming between them. "What are you doing here?" Makoto walked in with a smile, standing by the crib and peeking inside. "Ah, this little baby is so adorable." As he reached out to touch the infant, his hand was sharply slapped away. Maria snapped coldly, "Don't touch her." Makoto paused, stunned for a few seconds, then clicked his tongue in annoyance. He walked around and sat by the crib. "What's the problem? She's my daughter. I can't even touch her." Arms crossed, Maria scoffed, her face expressionless. "Your daughter? Funny how she only becomes your daughter now. Where were you when we were fighting? Where were you when I called after falling down the stairs? Huh? Did you remember she was your daughter then? And all these days, not even once did you show up. You've been too busy playing house with that woman and that kid. They're the real family to you." Her voice grew more emotional with every sentence, her eyes starting to redden. A flicker of impatience and irritation crossed Makoto's turned-away face, but when he looked back, it was once again plastered with a conciliatory smile. Okay, I was wrong. Totally my fault, baby," he said, slapping his own cheek in mock punishment. "I made you upset. I'm sorry. The Liu family's been hanging around non-stop. I didn't have a single chance to sneak in." Willow went through hell delivering that baby. He leaned in and peppered Maria's face with kisses. Maria's expression softened slightly, her lips twitching in restrained emotion. "Fine." Looking into Makoto's tender, flirtatious eyes, she actually felt a bit guilty. "It must be hard for you, having to keep sweet-talking that family. You've worked so hard, hubby." It seemed she had already forgotten that the reason for her premature labor was a furious argument with Makoto over the phone that ended with her falling down the stairs. Makoto caressed her face gently, voice full of fake warmth. "Don't worry, I've taken care of everything. I already swapped the babies. Our daughter will be raised like a princess." Maria's cheeks flushed red as she wrapped her arms around him in satisfaction. Suddenly, a buzz came from her pocket. She slipped out of Makoto's arms and checked her phone. "Who is it?" he asked. "No one," Maria replied calmly. "Just an old friend." Her fingers flew across the screen as she quickly replied, then turned back with a sugary smile and threw her arms around Makoto again. "Maria baby, when are you coming over? I miss you." "In the next couple days. Prepare some pretty ones for me." Chapter 14. Knock knock. "Coming." I opened the door, and froze for a second. "Anna, what's up?" She wore a soft cotton linen shirt, a gentle smile playing at her lips as her eyes curved in a warm arc. "There's going to be a bonfire party tonight," she said. "It's hosted by the locals. It's your first time here during one. Want to go?" Lately, things had been relatively peaceful. Fewer injuries, fewer emergencies. It was the most relaxed time since I'd arrived. Everyone's spirits had eased, if only temporarily. I blinked, a little hesitant. But I don't really know how to dance." "Anne." "That's okay," Anna replied softly. "You can just enjoy the atmosphere." We locked eyes for a moment, and in hers, I caught a flicker of anticipation, maybe even nervousness. My heart skipped a beat. My gaze wavered. "Well, all right then." I pulled out a patterned shirt from the wardrobe. It was a gift from Mara at a local market, and I'd never worn it before. To be honest, it wasn't really my style. I'd always been reserved, low-key, not someone who suited this sort of thing. But staring at the shirt in my hands, I made up my mind. Nightfall, bonfire, music. Alicia leaned casually against a chip table, a beer in hand. She cast a sideways glance at the woman beside her and smirked. "You look nervous." Anna stiffly denied it. "Why would I be nervous? Is George coming?" "You invited him yourself," Alicia teased, looping an arm around her friend's neck. "I swear, the vibe between you two has changed recently. Don't tell me your wish is finally coming true. Is there something you're not telling me?" Anna's mind instantly went to the night of the blackout. She pressed her lips together. "Don't say weird things in front of Dr. Wong." Yeah, I know." Alicia took a sip of beer, then turned and her eyes lit up. She raised her hand. "George." Anna instinctively straightened her back and turned around naturally. I walked over quickly, still slightly out of breath. I gave a bright smile, teeth white in the firelight. "Sorry I'm a little late." Anna's breath caught. Her eyes didn't blink as they landed on me. The vibrant patterned shirt clashed starkly against my pale skin and usually quiet demeanor. It created a surprising contrast. There were scars on my arms from recent rescue missions, but rather than flaws, they added to my appeal. In the dim lighting, My ears glowed faintly red. My eyes sparkled, even brighter than the starry sky. A gentle tap on Anna's back brought her back to her senses. She smiled. "Ah, it's okay, you're not late." Her heart was pounding like a drum, but only she could hear it. This land was rich with warmth and optimism. That night, almost everyone was swept up in joy, forgetting all their pain and troubles. Someone shoved a drink into my hand, and I downed several cups with growing enthusiasm. The atmosphere was infectious. I entered a strange, exhilarated state. People joined hands and danced in a circle around the bonfire, singing joyfully. Anna was beside me, our palms tightly pressed together. The firelight flickered on her smiling face, and I wondered, maybe it was just the alcohol, but why was my heart racing like this? Laughter and singing echoed faintly in the distance. I wandered off toward the lake to get some air. Anna, who hadn't been drinking, followed behind me at a calm pace. Then suddenly, maybe I stepped on a rock, I stumbled and nearly fell. Anna rushed over and grabbed my hand, but with the difference in weight, she nearly fell too. I blinked slowly. Once she helped me steady myself, the warmth of her body vanished a second later as she politely stepped back. "How much did you drink?" Anna asked with a mix of concern and amusement. "Maybe you should head back. I'll walk you." I turned to face her, standing still, my eyes lowered as if deep in thought. Anna found me amusing in that moment. She leaned in, waved a hand in front of my face and joked, "Hello, Dr. Wang. Do you even recognize me right now?" My pupils slowly widened. My whole body froze. A sensation I had never experienced brushed against my lips, soft, warm. Her fluttering eyelashes were just inches away. I bent down and kissed her. Chapter 15. Where did you go again? What could you possibly be so busy with lately? Makoto sat on the couch, staring coldly at the message he'd sent on his phone. He waited for a long time with no reply. His fingers slowly curled tighter, barely suppressing the urge to smash the device. He let out a long breath, forcing himself to calm down. Then, lifting his eyes, he shot a cold glance upstairs. He asked the housekeeper to make some tea, then carried the tray up himself. Standing in front of the study door, he adjusted his expression into a loving smile. "Baby." The moment the door opened, his sharp eyes caught Willow hurriedly covering a notebook with a stack of documents. A flicker of panic flashed across her face as she stood up, trying to act casual. "You brought it up yourself?" she asked gently, taking the tray from his hands. Makoto showed no sign of suspicion on his face, but his fingers, hanging at his side, twisted together tightly. "What were you working on?" "Ah, just some company stuff." Willow smiled. "There's been a lot going on at the group lately." "Lies. You're lying too." Makoto smiled, but inside, he was cold and biting. Dark, twisted emotions had begun to take root in his heart, growing like wild vines. Screaming silently, Willow patted his shoulder, joking as she nudged him to turn around. "Go to bed early. You don't need to wait up for me." The study door shut again. Willow let out a quiet sigh. She sat back down and moved the papers, revealing the diary underneath. George's diary. She had brought it back last week after a short visit to the Liu estate. Willow didn't even know how it had happened. One moment she was just visiting, and the next, she found herself standing in front of George's old bedroom. She had pushed the door open. Inside, the room was just like it had been during his university days. Most things were still there, placed neatly in their original spots, though there hadn't been much to begin with. That was when she'd stumbled upon one of his old high school notebooks. She had taken it, like a thief. Her rational mind screamed that she shouldn't look. Even if George had done wrong, even if their ending had been ugly, this was still a violation of his privacy. She knew all that, but she still couldn't stop herself. The longer she stayed out of contact with George, the more often he crept into her thoughts. The more she found herself wanting to understand what he was really thinking. It was ironic. After knowing him for most of her life, she was only now realizing she might have never truly known his inner world. In the diary, George had written, "I don't even know when I started liking Willow, but I think she's like the sun. Willow likes Makoto. That kind of hurts, but I guess it's not surprising. I just hope they're happy. Willow thinks something's going on between Alicia and me, and I didn't deny it. Maybe I let her believe that on purpose. That way she'd never guess the truth, that it's her I actually like." He had really liked her, silently, for a very long time. That was the clearest, rawest impression Willow took from the diary. His feelings had been pure, quiet, and rational. That was the way George had loved her. Could someone who had loved her like that really have done the things Makoto had accused him of? The question crept unbidden into her mind. Yet she still couldn't bring herself to doubt Makoto's word. Not even a little. Where is he now? Is he doing okay? And somewhere far from her thoughts, the owner of that diary, completely unaware, was sinking into a brand new storm of troubles. Chapter 16. George, Dr. Wang. George. Ah. I snapped back to my senses. What's going on? I was telling you there's a new virus outbreak in the disaster zone. Alicia said with an exasperated frown. Where were you just now? You've been completely out of it. I pressed my lips together and gave an apologetic shake of the head, but my mind kept replaying the night of the bonfire. Even though it had been a week, every time I thought about it, I wanted to collapse from embarrassment and scream into the void. How could I get drunk and force a kiss on someone? Unfortunately, I hadn't blacked out. I remembered everything clearly the next morning, the memories flashing through my mind as I brushed my teeth. In a split second, I had blushed from head to toe. Since then, I'd been actively avoiding Anna. I didn't even have the courage to see how she had reacted, or what she might be thinking. Alicia glanced at me, mumbling to herself, "You and Anna have been acting really weird lately." Both of us stayed silent, continuing to eat with our thoughts miles away. Then, chaos. A nurse came running over, panting, her face filled with panic. "Sue, reporter Sue, something's happened to her. She might have been infected with the virus." By the time Alicia and I got there, Anna had already been locked inside an isolation chamber, waiting for the test results. The room had a transparent wall. You could clearly see Anna sitting on the bed, staring off into space, looking a little bored. Alicia rushed off to the lab to track the test. I stood alone in front of the glass, my mind blank. Anna, who had been looking around the room casually, suddenly turned her head as if sensing something, and locked eyes with me. She froze for a second, then immediately got up and walked over. I had no idea what kind of expression I was wearing, but Anna looked up at me through the glass, her gaze filled with calm and a trace of helpless reassurance. Her lips moved. She was saying something. My limbs were stiff, my reaction slow. It took me a moment of watching her mouth move before I understood. "I'm fine. Don't cry. Don't cry." Was I crying? I blinked in confusion. My vision blurred for a second, then cleared again. No tears had actually fallen, but my eyes were red, so red they looked like they could bleed. Anna had been photographing in a high-risk zone and got caught up in a dispute, during which she was accidentally scratched by an infected person. She'd responded quickly and calmly, informing the doctors and cooperating fully as they rushed her to the hospital. Anna had always been carefree, used to uncertainty and danger. Life and death didn't weigh heavily on her. When she realized she might have contracted a deadly virus, she had a brief moment of panic, but it passed quickly. She had chosen to come to a chaotic war zone. Risk was part of the deal. If she got infected, then so be it. At least her case might help modern medicine advance. But it wasn't until she saw George's helpless face pressed against the glass that fear truly took root in her. If she really was positive, if she truly didn't make it out alive, this man, would he be sad? After all, they had kissed. Anna thought half-jokingly, though it was only because he was drunk. But still, she really didn't want to see George cry. The two of them stared at each other in silence, each unsure of what the other was thinking. Suddenly, I lifted my hand and gently pressed it against the glass, fingers slightly curled. Anna blinked in surprise, then slowly raised her own hand, placing it directly across from mine. It was as if we were holding hands through the barrier. My lips, pale from tension, parted. I leaned close to the glass and said, one word at a time, "Anna, when the results come out, no matter what they are, I have something I want to tell you." I spoke loudly, so from inside the isolation chamber, Anna could vaguely make out the sound. She stood frozen for a moment, her heart suddenly racing. I didn't stay long. There were still other patients to tend to. I couldn't remain by her side, and the test results wouldn't be ready that quickly anyway. In the early hours of the morning, I quietly returned to the isolation ward. To my surprise, she was still awake. We looked at each other in silence, a quiet understanding passing between us. Then I leaned back against the glass and slowly slid down into a crouch. Minute by minute, time trickled by, until the first pale light crept across the horizon, and Alicia came running over, out of breath. When she saw me, she looked startled, then broke into a bright grin. "The results are out. She's not infected. Completely healthy." The weight that had been crushing my chest finally dropped. I stood up in a daze, my limbs tingling and weak. Alicia opened the isolation room door. Anna stepped out as if nothing had happened, calm, gentle, composed. We stood quietly for a few seconds. Then suddenly, I pulled her into a tight embrace, one hand pressing firmly against her back. Before Anna could even react, she heard my voice, trembling yet steady, right by her ear. "I like you, Anna." Love is the most fragile and elusive thing of all. Chapter 17. When no one else was home, Makoto quietly entered Maria's nanny room. The moment he smelled an unfamiliar men's cologne on her discarded clothes, his mind went eerily blank. Willow said she loved him, yet had always unconsciously defended George, and now she spent her days secretly clinging to George's diary. Maria said she loved him too, but even after all he'd done for her, even after she gave birth to his child, she was still sneaking around behind his back, seeking out pleasure. And there had been many other women who claimed to love him as well. They all disgusted him. Only what he could hold in his own hands, tangible, controllable, was real. Money, power, fame, and now, his daughter. These things would never betray him. Makoto held the tiny baby tenderly in his arms, whispering, "Daddy will love you forever." He stood in a daze for a moment. Then suddenly, he sensed something was wrong. She was burning up, way too hot. His expression turned instantly grim. The baby had a fever. Willow was in the Lu Corporation's office reviewing documents when the call came in. Some of her assets had recently encountered minor issues, and her brows had been furrowed tightly all morning. But when she heard the tension in Makoto's voice on the other end of the line, her brows knit even tighter. She immediately called for the driver to take her to the hospital. Maria, upon hearing the news, also found an excuse to tag along. In the car, Maria looked at the rearview mirror and casually asked, "Chairwoman Lu, did something happen?" Willow, still focused on her phone as she tried to calm the panicked Makoto through messages, didn't even look up. "Emma has a fever," she said flatly. Maria's eyes paused for a moment, her pupils flickering. "I see. Don't worry, Chairwoman Lu, the child will be fine." However, when both women arrived at the hospital, Emma had already been sent into the emergency room. Makoto stood frozen in fear, his entire body stiff, face pale as he gripped Willow's hand. Their eyes met Maria's just behind them. Makoto froze for a moment, then quickly looked away. "If something happens to the baby, if something happens to Emma, I really won't be able to live with it." His voice was hoarse with despair. Willow gently patted his shoulder and back, doing her best to stay composed. "It's okay. Don't panic. My parents are on their way." Suddenly, the emergency room doors swung open, and the doctor walked out, his face solemn. "Ms. Lu, Mr. Ito, your daughter." He paused, as if reluctant to continue. "Appears to have a congenital blood disorder, which severely compromises her immune system." Makoto's body swayed, and he nearly collapsed if not for Willow supporting him. Willow forced herself to remain calm. "Doctor, what should we do now?" "At the moment," the doctor replied, "she needs an immediate blood transfusion from a direct relative, preferably the biological mother. Once her vitals stabilize, we can assess further treatment." Willow nodded without hesitation. "All right, no problem." Willow immediately rushed forward without hesitation. But after only a few steps, she suddenly felt a tug on her sleeve that halted her. She looked down and saw that the once panicked and disoriented Makoto had suddenly gone silent, his sharp, gaunt face now ghostly pale. Assuming he was just worried for her safety, Willow gently comforted him. "Makoto, let go. It's okay. I'll go with the doctor to donate blood." She pried his hand off and began following the doctor, when suddenly, his voice rang out behind her, heavy and shaky. "Wait." Willow froze. A sudden, ominous feeling surged up inside her. She stood motionless, not turning back. The doctor also paused, glancing over in confusion. A long silence settled over them before the doctor cautiously asked, "I'm sorry, Ms. Lu, but may I ask your blood type?" Willow opened her mouth slightly, bewildered, but before she could respond, Makoto gritted his teeth and cut in. "There's no need to ask." From behind came the sound of a scuffle, as if someone were being physically restrained. Willow turned her head, and saw Makoto gripping the arm of the young, newly hired housekeeper, Maria. Maria's face was visibly flustered and resistant, trying to push him off. Hey, stop it, let go, Maria. What the hell is wrong with you?" Makoto's voice was hoarse and rising with desperation. "You're really going to just stand there and watch a child die? She's your daughter." Boom. Willow's mind went completely blank. It was as if all the blood in her body had frozen solid. Her dazed eyes shifted towards Sandra and Martin, who had just arrived at the hospital. They had clearly heard what Makoto had just shouted. Both stood frozen, shocked and utterly confused. Sandra's voice trembled as she turned to the doctor. What is going on?" The doctor frowned, his tone tense. "It's complicated, but for now, this woman," he said, gesturing to Maria, "needs to come with me immediately." Willow closed her eyes. Her breath trembled as she tried to contain the storm building inside her. Then she strode forward, and with surprising strength, seized Maria by the arm. Without giving her a chance to resist, Willow dragged her straight to the doctor. Chapter 18. Saving people comes first. Anna leaned against the wall and said to me as I was still treating a wounded patient. Most of the lunch hour had already passed, and I was still tending to a man's injuries. Anna had come to find me for lunch, but even after waiting a long while, she showed no sign of impatience. I was wearing a mask, with only my eyes visible. Anna stood quietly to the side, her gaze drifting from the man's focused eyes to his skilled hands, then to somewhere else. Inside, she felt calm and quietly content. I finally finished the task at hand, let out a sigh, gave a few final instructions, and stood up to walk over to Anna. We walked side by side out of the room. Once we reached a quiet section of the hallway, I took off my mask to breathe in some fresh air. turning my head with a hint of guilt. I said, "Sorry to keep you." I suddenly stopped mid-sentence, my pupils widening slightly as I looked into Anna's smiling eyes just inches away. My ears began to flush. "What are you doing?" I looked away, my eyes darting around nervously. "What if someone walks by?" "I already checked. No one's here." Anna chuckled and ruffled my hair. "Dr. Wong, you did great." "Thank you, my boyfriend." When Willow and I parted ways, I never thought I'd be able to fall for someone again, let alone have the courage to take someone's hand first. But life is unpredictable. You meet someone, and it just happens. The moment I hugged Anna, she held me just as tightly. In that instant, my anxious, uneasy heart suddenly felt calm. This wasn't some thrill of a heightened situation. It was something real, genuine feelings. We understood each other without speaking. Like survivors of some emotional storm, we held each other for a long time, until a quiet voice broke the moment. "You know, I'm still here." Alicia stood with her arms crossed, feeling like she was radiating awkwardness. But when she locked eyes with her two friends, she couldn't help but smile. People have this mysterious sixth sense sometimes, and she just knew these two were meant to be. They just met a little late, but even now, it was still just right, because of their personalities and pasts. George and Anna, who together were nearing 70 years old, had only just started dating. Yet, there was none of that over-the-top romance. Instead, there was a kind of quiet awkwardness and a gentle steadiness. Anna stood silently outside the patient room waiting for me to finish. Like a girl back in school waiting for the one she liked to get out of class. Sometimes, in fleeting moments, I'd recall the way Willow used to wait for me at the classroom door to walk home together. Back then, I always pretended to be calm, while secretly thrilled on the inside. Now, when I remember those times, I feel nothing really. Maybe just a nostalgic sigh for youth, and maybe a bit of curiosity. What kind of girl was Anna when she was a student? One quiet evening, as we walked hand in hand under the night sky, I couldn't resist asking her. Anna thought for a moment and laughed. Probably, kind of pretentious. "Don't laugh," she said, glancing helplessly at me as I burst out laughing. "I'm serious." Looking back now, I think I was super cringy and immature. I used to think I was so clever, read tons of books, and believed I was above it all, detached from the world. But it wasn't until I became a war correspondent that I truly realized how small and fragile life is, and how precious peace can be. I nodded thoughtfully, almost involuntarily imagining a younger, slightly arrogant Anna, and the way she slowly softened with time. "What about you?" Anna swung our hands. Me. I was lost in thought for a second. I thought for a moment, then said, "Introverted, quiet, always had my head in books. Pretty boring, honestly." Then I smiled. Maybe the only thing remotely teenage about me was having a secret crush. Anna suddenly fell silent. "What, jealous?" I tilted my head and teased her. "I really don't feel anything anymore," I said softly. "No love, no hate. It's all gone. People really do change. No one stays stuck in one place forever." Anna suddenly stopped walking and tugged me back when I absent-mindedly took a few more steps. She slipped a red thread bracelet off her wrist and quietly fastened it around mine. Eyes lowered, her movements gentle. "My family gave me this when they found out I was going to be a war correspondent," she said. "They said it was for protection." I was stunned for a second and instinctively reached to take it off. Anna pressed my hand down firmly, her voice soft but unwavering. "Don't take it off. I want you to have it. George, I can't promise how far we'll go, how long we'll last, but right now, I'm being a little selfish, a little willful. I just hope you won't forget me, that you won't stop feeling something for me, anything at all." I looked up at the woman in front of me, so serious and sincere, and my heart beat wildly in my chest. I've always been the rational, composed type, but in that moment, that night, a thought echoed quietly in my mind, that I wanted to be with this woman for the rest of my life. What I couldn't have imagined back then was how, for a long time afterward, that very moment would haunt me like a nightmare. It would tear me apart, drive me to the brink, and the red thread on my wrist would feel less like a charm, and more like shackles. Chapter 19. At the cafe downstairs from the hospital, Willow and Makoto sat facing each other. One stared down at the table, the other looked out the window. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Emma had finally been transferred out of the ICU after several days. Her condition was stable now, and so, Willow and Makoto finally had time. Time to lay everything out. Willow hadn't had a full night's sleep in days. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, bloodshot and weary. Her face looked utterly worn out. "I've been going through my assets these past few days." Willow suddenly looked up at Makoto, breaking the heavy silence. Makoto's long eyelashes trembled. His already pale face turned even whiter. "There are a lot of strange gaps, missing funds, hidden transactions." She blinked slowly, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "If I hadn't deliberately gone looking, I probably wouldn't have noticed." She paused for 2 seconds, It was you, wasn't it? You gave it all to her, Maria. Even just saying that name made Willow's breath catch painfully in her chest. Why did you do it? Why? That was the one question that had haunted her through countless sleepless nights, and still made no sense. Makoto's lips pressed into a thin line. His profile looked cold and stubborn. He slowly turned his head to meet Willow's eyes. His lips moved slightly. Because I hate you, Willow. I really, deeply hate you. Makoto suddenly laughed. You keep saying you love me, but did you ever really see me? Do you even know what kind of person I actually am? You just projected your own emotions onto someone who fit your fantasy. His breath came quicker. George and you, both of you disgust me. He clearly liked you, but he had to pretend like he didn't care. Putting on this self-righteous act like he was starring in some tragic, unrequited love drama. Have you ever seen the way you act around George? Willow, you're a damn fool. After all these years, you still don't even know who you really love. Makoto remembered it clearly. One of his birthday parties back in high school. Everyone had gotten a little drunk from all the fun. At the end of the night, Willow took George home. Makoto had stood behind them, watching Willow half carry the stumbling George with a mix of annoyance and helplessness. You idiot, she muttered. Can't hold your liquor and still keep drinking. My mom's gonna yell at me for this. You talk too much, George slurred, his head resting sleepily on Willow's shoulder. The ones involved are always blind. It's the bystanders who see things clearly, and Makoto was the bystander who got dragged into it. He had stood there expressionless, but his fists at his sides were clenched so tightly his nails dug deep into his palms. Later, he met Maria, drawn to her dangerous, seductive energy. He fell completely for her, but then Maria got hooked on gambling, racked up a huge debt. Makoto's family never cared much about him, and Maria, she had no way to pay it back herself. As he stewed in frustration trying to find a way out, he saw the news about Willow and George. That's when the plan was born. Willow sat there, listening to Makoto's voice, sometimes resentful, sometimes laced with mockery, and felt a growing panic and confusion swelling inside her. And my daughter? She asked. Relax, we're not that heartless, Makoto said coldly. She's being taken care of. So, her voice cracked, dry and hollow. What you said, about George? Makoto smirked, pure contempt on his face. Obviously a lie. I just made it up. That idiot really believed you and I were in love. He even gave us his blessing. Can you believe that? Absolutely revolting. Willow's breath caught. It felt like a hand was slowly squeezing her heart. Tighter and tighter. A flood of memories surged through her mind. The flat, uneventful years of their marriage. The way George looked when he was misunderstood. His journals. So many things. Scene after scene. Clear and cruel. Her eyes reddened, and the fists resting on her knees slowly clenched. It was only in this moment that she finally realized. She really missed George, and she truly, deeply regretted everything. Chapter 20. When Willow received Alicia's call, she was both confused and emotionally unsettled. After all, 4 years, she had believed Alicia was George's unattainable true love, the one he had always carried a torch for. She recalled things she had done in the past, and the feelings that had come with them, and only now, in hindsight, she realized, maybe she'd been jealous back then. She just hadn't known it. Her voice was distracted. Hello, what is it? Alicia's reaction on the other end was strange. There was a long silence before a hoarse, dry voice finally spoke. George and I are back, but he's not okay. Willow rushed to the address Alicia had sent, her heart pounding. She ran down the hallway and flung open the door. Her steps came to a sudden halt. She stood there, breathing heavily, eyes fixed on the back of the men sitting in the room. Alicia and several other people, doctors, from the look of them, stood nearby, discussing something in low tones. Willow stepped forward slowly. Alicia noticed her and raised a hand to stop her. She looked utterly exhausted, carrying the weight of unspoken burdens. She hadn't rested properly in a long time. Willow leaned sideways, trying to get a glimpse of George's face, but all she could see were the bandages wrapped around his arm and his head. Her anxiety spiked. What happened? What's going on? Alicia glanced at George, then pulled Willow to the side. In a calm, concise voice, she explained everything. During the time George had vanished without contact, he had gone to Africa to work with Doctors Without Borders. There, he met Alicia's friend Anna, a war correspondent. They had fallen in love. They were together, but then Anna was caught in an attack. She died, or rather, Willow suspected that Alicia had originally meant to say died, but changed it last second, softening it to was caught in the conflict. Anna had stayed behind to cover George's retreat, and was caught in an explosion. There was no body, no time, no conditions to search. In the war zone, people died every day. Lives were lost like ants underfoot. George was deeply traumatized. Since regaining consciousness, He had barely spoken. It was as if his soul had been left behind in that chaos. I figured, your family's the closest thing he has left. Alicia said quietly, her eyes closing in fatigue. That's why I called you. I thought maybe you could help him. The flood of information hit all at once. Willow was speechless for a long time. In a daze, she slowly walked over and crouched beside him. Her heart clenched. The man in front of her was visibly thinner. His already lean face looked almost sunken. There was no light in his eyes. Nothing but a gray, empty fog surrounding him. He seemed more like a ghost than a living person. Only the red string bracelet on his left wrist, something Willow had never seen before, stood out, bright, vivid, the only color left on him. George. Willow called his name gently, reaching out to pat him lightly. It's me, Willow, she said slowly, carefully, as if afraid of scaring him. Can you hear me? It's been a long time, George, she whispered to him for what felt like an eternity, until finally, there was a flicker of response. His pupils moved, slowly. He turned his head downward and saw her face. Willow sat up straighter, her voice trembling with hope. George, look at me. It's me, Willow. His lips moved. His brows drew together, slightly. Willow, you're... Willow, yes, I am. Willow's eyes burned, her heart aching so badly it was hard to breathe. Suddenly, his frail body began to tremble uncontrollably. His voice broke into fragments. She died. Willow, do you know she's dead? Anna. Her name was Anna. She died, for me. She died protecting me. I. Tears spilled from his wide, hollow eyes. Drenched in despair, he stopped speaking. Instead, he buried his head in his hands and let out a pained, guttural wail. Willow, move. Alicia and the other doctors rushed over, trying to calm him, restrain him. Willow was pushed aside, landing on the floor. She stared at the scene in front of her, dazed. George's emotion spilled into the room like a tangible force, engulfing her, pulling her in. Her chest hurt, as if stabbed by 1,000 needles. She couldn't breathe. If she hadn't been so blind, if she hadn't believed Makoto so easily, would George have never gone to Africa? Would he have never met Anna? Would none of this have happened? Would he still be the same George she once knew? It was her fault. If time could rewind, if she had cherished George the way he deserved, would everything have turned out differently? Chapter 21. Go first. Don't worry about me. It'll be fine. George, just go. You go first. I jolted awake from the dream. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, drenched in sweat. My body was still trembling uncontrollably, my breathing rapid and uneven. I stayed in that state for a while before slowly pushing myself up, cradling my head with a shaky hand. I had dreamed of that day again. Anna's final words still echoed in my ears, haunting and inescapable. I closed my eyes. My right hand instinctively reached for the red thread on my left wrist, muscle memory, an anchor I clung to as I painstakingly pieced together my shattered emotions. I had done this countless times over the past few days. Who knows how long passed before I dragged my aching, weak body downstairs. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water and leaned against the island, sipping slowly. Suddenly, I heard the soft rustling of footsteps approaching. I turned my head and saw Willow, standing there in silence. We locked eyes for a few seconds. I gave a faint smile. Why aren't you asleep yet? Willow's pupils were dark as ink, staring at me as if lost in thought. She dropped her gaze and said softly, I heard some noise downstairs. Came out to check. Willow walked over to me, picked up a glass, and poured herself some water too. The late night air was quiet. Not a word spoken between us. You've been staying here these days, I mentioned casually. What about Makoto? Why isn't he with you? We were staying at the Liu family residence. Sandra had found out about what happened to me and was heartbroken. She'd been trying everything to help me recover my strength, but I'd been drowning in my own emotions for so long. I had no space to care about anything else. Only recently had I started feeling a bit better, and only then did I begin to notice that something felt off. Speaking of your kid, I still haven't met them yet, I said, my tone light, as if we were just ordinary siblings chatting. Are they cute? Willow was strangely silent for a long time. Then, out of nowhere, she said, very cute, but they're not my child. I froze, not quite understanding what she meant. As I set the glass down on the counter with a soft clink, Willow's eyes momentarily lost focus. She slowly began to explain. I listened quietly as she told me what had happened during this time, and the truth behind it all. A complicated mix of emotions stirred in me. Absurdity, resignation, or maybe just the dull indifference of someone uninvolved. Maria never really quit gambling. After Makoto helped her patch up her previous debts, she went and lost a huge amount again. And she's been sleeping around with a bunch of people. Lots of folks have their eyes on her now. It's not going to end well. Makoto's done with her. I gave a quiet in response. So what are you two planning to do? Divorce. We're getting the paperwork done in a few days, Willow said with her head lowered. As for the child, he's Makoto's. Of course, but the kid's sick, and I'll do my best to pull strings and find resources to help treat him. That's all. I tilted my head back and drained the last sip of water in my glass, nodding without emotion. Sounds good. Well, I'll just. George. Just as I turned to leave, my wrist was suddenly grabbed by a forceful hand. I didn't react. Willow clung to my arm, refusing to let go. She was clearly panicked, her words stumbling out. I'm sorry for how I treated you back then. I really am. I know I was stupid and slow to realize what mattered, but I've finally seen it now. I've changed, I swear. Can we start over? Could you maybe still love me again? Her palm pressed against my skin, feeling the protruding bones. It broke her heart, how George was still so thin, so worn out. She truly wanted to treat him well now, to make up for all those lost years. I didn't shake Willow off, nor did I speak for a long time. We just stood there in that posture for who knows how long. At last, I spoke. Willow, I accept your apology, but let's not. Willow's emotions plunged again, stunned as she watched me turn away. I gently slipped my hand from hers. My eyes were calm, yet glistening. There's no chance for us anymore. I really did love you all those years. Even now, I'm grateful. You once brought light into my life, but the past doesn't come back, and I no longer have the strength to love someone again. Chapter 22. The divorce between Willow and Makoto was handled quietly and swiftly. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. When they walked out of the civil affairs office, they parted ways without another word. Halfway down the steps, Makoto couldn't help but turn his head. But unlike the endings in movies, no one was waiting behind him when he looked back. All he saw was the back of Willow's car as it disappeared down the road. He stood there for a long moment, dazed, before curling his lips into a self-mocking smile and turning away. Suddenly, his phone lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. Makoto stared at the screen for a few seconds with a blank expression before pressing the answer button. At once, a voice came through that made his stomach turn. Babe, sweetheart, Makoto, help me, you have to help me. Maria's breathless, frantic voice continued. If even you abandon me, those people are really going to kill me. Emma, think about Emma. I'm her mother. You really want her to grow up without one. I'm begging you. Please save me. I swear I'll change. Makoto listened in silence, his face devoid of emotion. On the other end, Maria sobbed uncontrollably, her pleas pouring out like she meant every single word from the bottom of her heart. Closing his eyes in disgust, Makoto finally spoke. Maria, you brought all this on yourself. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. My child doesn't need someone like you as a mother. You're on your own now. With that, he pulled the phone away from his ear. On the other end, Maria fell silent for a beat, then launched into a furious tirade. Amid the onslaught of vile, foul-mouthed insults, Makoto calmly pressed the hang-up button and immediately blocked the number again. He then removed the SIM card from the phone, walked to a nearby trash bin, snapped the card in two, and tossed it in without flinching. Afterward, Makoto lowered his gaze and took a deep, trembling breath. What right did he have to call Willow and George fools? He was just as much a fool himself. It was like he'd been bewitched, falling for someone like that. Suffocated by the weight in his chest, Makoto found himself wandering toward the park, hoping the air might help clear his mind. And there, he unexpectedly ran into someone. We crossed paths on the winding path through the park, both freezing in our tracks. I stopped, a flicker of hesitation passing across my face. Seeing me begin to turn and walk another way, Makoto blurted out, "Wait." He rushed over, grabbing my arm to stop me from leaving. We sat down on a bench. Maybe it was the nice weather, or the fresh air carried by all the greenery, but for once, we talked peacefully. Makoto had already heard what had happened to me, and there was a quiet sense of sympathy in his expression. He hadn't planned what to say when he stopped me, spent half the time just figuring it out in his head. What kind of person was she? I paused for a moment, then realized who she referred to. Instinctively, my eyes dropped to the red string on my left wrist. Makoto noticed too, glancing sideways. She gave that to you? Yes. My expression softened slightly as I nodded. As if suddenly caught in memories, or maybe just searching for the right words, I stared into space for a long while before I spoke again. She was someone who made you feel safe. Someone who made you believe in courage and hope again. Honestly, I don't even know how to describe her exactly. Just that, I loved her very much, and I miss her. My voice grew softer as the words trailed off, the ending barely audible. Makoto watched my face, and something tightened in his chest. He was stubborn, almost to the point of obsession. He had never regretted his choices, because they were his to make, but right now, he couldn't stop himself from asking, "Do you blame me? If it hadn't been for me, maybe you and Willow could have." I seemed surprised by his question. Then I actually gave a faint laugh and shook my head. I don't think like that. Even without you, Willow and I might not have ended well. Who can say for sure? I murmured. Without you, I never would have had the chance to explore my own beliefs. I wouldn't have met her, and I never once regretted meeting her. Makoto's throat felt dry. The words, "I'm sorry," hovered on his lips, but in the end, they never came out. I tilted my head back, looking up at the maze of tree branches overhead. Sunlight filtered through the gaps, so bright it made me squint. And then I said softly, "I never regret anything." She was the red thread around my wrist, until it became my lifeblood, and she's been with me ever since. Chapter 23. 2 years flew by in the blink of an eye. During that time, I carried my backpack and traveled to many corners of the world. My beard grew long, then was shaved short. My clothes went from t-shirts to heavy down jackets. The only thing that never changed was the red thread on my wrist. It never once left me. Strangely, it never wore down or faded. It was as if it had truly become part of me, part of my bloodstream, fused into my life. In every place I visited, I would take a picture of myself. Nothing fancy, no stylish outfits or professional angles, just a simple smile, as if to say to someone, "Look, I'm doing fine." I sent a lot of postcards, one to the Liu family, one to Alicia, but I rarely went back. I just kept moving on, from one place to the next. "I'm on leave. When are you coming back? It's been forever. Let's catch up sometime." Alicia's message lit up the screen. She had been worried about my mental state, especially in the beginning. Maybe she feared I'd snap in the middle of some journey and end my life, so she often checked in. It made me laugh and sigh at the same time, but deep down, I knew it was care, from a true friend. "We'll see." I typed back. Just as I sent the message, a sudden commotion broke out nearby. Looking up, I saw a middle-aged woman collapse at the entrance of a cafe, clutching her chest, her face contorted in pain as she struggled to breathe. "Ah. Someone's having a medical emergency. Call an ambulance. Is there a doctor?" Without hesitation, I dropped my bag and ran over, shouting clearly as I moved, "Make way, I'm a doctor." I knelt down and calmly performed an initial assessment of her condition, then pulled an emergency kit from my backpack. "Has someone called an ambulance?" Without even looking up, I asked. When someone said yes, I took their phone and gave a quick, concise report of her status to the emergency line. "What happened? Is she okay?" A woman's anxious voice called out from outside the crowd. My hands froze mid-motion. I jerked my head up. My heart skipped a beat. The world around me blurred. A familiar face, etched into my thoughts day and night, filled my vision. "Go, George." I quickly forced myself to focus again, suppressing every surge of emotion, and continued the rescue calmly. Only when the woman stabilized and was taken over by the medics did I finally exhale in relief. I stood up, legs weak and trembling, glancing around anxiously. My breath caught. She was still there, still standing in the same spot. The crowd had dispersed, leaving only her. At her feet, a cane rested silently. I stood frozen for a long time, unmoving. My eyes slowly turned red. Anna looked at me, her eyes just as red. She gave a gentle, sorrowful smile. "It's been a long time, George." "I'm sorry." I rushed forward and hugged her tightly, closing my eyes. My tears soaked through her shirt. Anna hadn't died. That day, she had narrowly escaped the explosion. Someone saved her. She survived, but her legs were seriously injured. When she woke up in the hospital, she fell into despair. She couldn't accept the possibility of being disabled for life. She didn't have the courage to face me, didn't want to burden me. So she hid everything, faked her own death. For 2 years, she lived in this quiet town, running a small cafe. After a long period of depression, she suddenly picked herself up again and began rehabilitation. From relying entirely on a wheelchair to now being able to walk independently with a cane. I listened quietly as she told me everything. My heart ached for her, but there was no anger. We exchanged stories about the days we had missed in each other's lives. I told her honestly how I had felt, and when I saw the guilt and pain on Anna's face, I gently kissed her. "Don't say you're sorry. If you feel guilty, then don't ever think of yourself as a burden. Don't ever leave me again." Anna blinked in surprise, then let out a tearful laugh. She hugged her brave lover tightly. "I love you, George. I love you too." After all these years apart, to turn around and find the one you love still there. Only love and courage can give us the strength to embrace each other again, this time, never to let go.